Have you ever sat in a silent room and heard a noise that you can't quite place? Or maybe you've been driving down a deserted road at night and heard what sounded like someone singing or talking just off in the distance. Some people might brush these off as simple tricks of the ear, but others know better. They know that sometimes what we hear in the quiet moments is not of this world. These are the scariest times when the veil between our reality and the next one is at its thinnest. And though we may not be able to see it, there are some things that we can hear. And if we listen very carefully, very still, sometimes they're trying to tell us something. From strange sounds in the middle of the night to music from another dimension, here are 5 haunting echoes of midnight whispers. Number 5. The scratching in the walls. You're home alone, settled in for the evening, and suddenly you hear it. A scratching sound coming from within your walls. At first you ignore it, assuming it's just some mice playing about in your attic, but then the scratching gets louder and more insistent. It seems to be coming right from behind the wall in your bedroom. You get up to investigate, but find nothing. You check all the doors and windows to make sure that they're shut tight, but everything is as it should be. You lie back down, but the scratching continues and it begins to drive you mad with worry. You try to rationalize it away, blaming everything from rats to raccoons. But deep down you know that there's something else at work here. Maybe it's an evil spirit trapped within your walls or a malevolent entity trying to claw its way into your bedroom. Whatever the case may be, you can't help but feel like you're being watched, stalked by something just beyond your sight. And as the hours pass and the scratching continues unabated, your fear only grows. This kind of story is one of the most common types of ghost stories that people tell, and many people have reported hearing scratching sounds in their homes, especially during the middle of the night. One woman wrote online about how she was awakened in the middle of the night by what sounded like footsteps dragging metal moans in her apartment. When she got up to investigate, she found that her door had been left wide open. Another man told a similar story about how he'd often hear dragging metal moans in his home at night, which would always stop when he went to investigate. However, he soon realized that the sound was coming from his air conditioning unit. Yet he swore that it was never on when he actually heard it. There are also countless reports of people hearing scratching sounds in their walls or ceilings and finding no source for the noise. Some have even gone so far as to tear open their walls only to find nothing. So, if you ever hear scratching sounds in your home, don't just ignore it. It could be the sound of something otherworldly trying to break into our realm. 4. The howling in the dark. As you're driving home late one night down a deserted country road, you hear it, a long, mournful howl echoing through the darkness. At first, you think it must be a lonely dog, but as you continue on, you realize that the sound is growing louder and more intense. It seems to be coming from all around you, as if the very forest itself is crying out in pain. You pull over to the side of the road and turn off your engine. The howling reaches a fever pitch, but then, just as suddenly as it began, it stops. You look around, but there's nothing there. The forest is silent, but you can't shake the feeling that you're being watched. Perhaps it was just a coyote or a stray animal. But sometimes the howling you hear in the dark is the sound of something more sinister, something that wants to draw you into the shadows and never let you go. People who live in rural areas or spend a lot of time in nature have often reported hearing strange animal-like howls in the middle of the night. These sounds are often described as being mournful or eerie and seem to come from all around you, making it impossible to pinpoint their source. One man told of how he was camping in the Beartooth Wilderness area in the early 1970s with his two sons, when they began hearing strange sounds in the middle of the night. He described them as being unlike anything he'd ever heard before, saying they were high-pitched and resembled screams. Another man told a similar story about how he was backpacking in the wind River Range in Wyoming when he heard strange howls in the middle of the night. He and his two companions couldn't find the source of the noise and were too afraid to venture outside their tent to investigate. Sometimes the howls you hear in the dark are the sound of lost souls wandering the earth, searching for their way home. 3. Voices in the static. You're sitting in your room listening to the radio when you hear it. A voice in the static, whispering just beyond the range of hearing. At first, you think it must be a trick of your imagination, but then the voice becomes clearer and you can make out the words. It's saying your name, telling you to do certain things, or even warning you of danger. You turn up the volume, but the voice is still faint and distorted. You can hear it, but it seems to be coming from another dimension, another plane of existence. You reach out to touch the radio, but as soon as you do, the voice stops. You know that what you heard wasn't just static. It was something more, something trying to communicate with you from beyond the grave. This kind of experience is known as EVP, or electronic voice phenomenon, and it's said to occur when the veil between our reality and the spirit world is at its thinnest, usually when people are using electronic devices like radios, televisions, or even cell phones. People have reported hearing all sorts of things on EVPs, from voices to music to even laughter. And some people believe that these recordings can be used as evidence of life after death. If you ever hear a voice in the static while you're listening to the radio, don't just dismiss it as static. It could be the voice of a loved one trying to contact you from beyond the grave. 2. The music in the air. You're relaxing in your backyard one summer evening when you hear it. A faint melody drifting through the air. At first, you think it must be coming from a nearby house, but the tune doesn't seem familiar and it's unlike anything that's playing on the radio. As you listen, the music becomes clearer and you can make out the lyrics, but they're in a language that you don't understand. It's beautiful, haunting, and otherworldly, and you can't help but feel drawn to it. You follow the sound, but it seems to lead nowhere. You look around, but there's nothing there. The music is all around you, yet it's coming from another dimension, another realm of existence. And as you stand there listening, you feel like you're being pulled into its embrace. This kind of experience is not unheard of, and many people have reported hearing strange music in the air that seems to come from another dimension. Some people believe that this music is the sound of angels or other benevolent beings, while others believe that it's the sound of demons trying to lure unsuspecting mortals into their clutches. But perhaps the most frightening part of hearing this kind of music is that once you hear it, you can never quite get rid of it. It seems to stick in your head and haunt your dreams, and you can't help but feel that something is watching you from the shadows, waiting for you to follow its tune. 1. Footsteps in the dark. You're walking home alone late one night when you hear it. Footsteps behind you, getting closer. At first you think nothing of it. There are plenty of people out and about at night, and it's probably just some guy jogging back from work. But as you continue on, you realize that the footsteps are getting louder and more insistent, and you can hear heavy breathing. You quicken your pace, but the footsteps keep pace with you. You turn around to see who's there, but there's nothing there. You run faster, but the footsteps are now pounding in your ears, driving you toward the edge of madness. And finally, you break into a sprint, desperate to escape whatever is pursuing you in the darkness. When we hear footsteps behind us, it's easy to assume that there's someone there. But what if the person who's following us is not from this world? That est what happened to one man who was walking home from work when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around, but saw nothing. Then he started running, but the footsteps kept pace with him. He ran until he collapsed from exhaustion, and when he looked back, he saw a shadowy figure standing over him. Hearing these sounds in the middle of the night can be a truly terrifying experience, and it's important to remember that not every sound has a logical explanation. Sometimes what we hear in the darkness is trying to tell us something, trying to warn us of danger, or trying to lead us astray. If you ever hear any of these sounds, use caution and trust your instincts. Because sometimes it's better to be safe than sorry. Now watch scary ghost stories from around the world. Or check out creepy pastas that will make your skin crawl.